expertise. It's the one thing someone can't shop online. Someone will always try and find parts online, especially smaller places, but they can't find labor online. But make sure you don't overdo it, because if we're bidding against each other and I say it's going to take me 10 hours at $100 an hour and you say it's going to take 12 hours at 120, and we both know it's really going to take 8, then it's they're probably going to go with me because I'm saving them some money on the labor part. So just be real careful when you're doing that. It's always good to get an understanding of what the local going rate for labor is in the industry, and then sort of apply that to what you're doing, especially depending on the job. If you've got to run an entirely new audio system in an existing building where you're going to have to be cutting drywall and going into ceilings and all that, that's a lot of labor. Don't cheat yourself on that. But if it's a totally brand new construction and you just have to run some wires up on a ladder, don't overdo it there either, because I don't want to say people are cheap, but people are cheap. Okay? The highest bidder never wins, the lowest bidder never wins, the middle guy always does, generally speaking. Okay, so design build versus project build. How many of you guys have ever designed a 70-volt system yourselves? Just you? Been doing it for
48 years.
Yeah, my math is terrible. Thank you for saving me. All right, so if you don't know how to design a 70-volt system and you have a specification that is somewhat overwhelming and you're kind of worried about it, Atlas will help you. Sorry. If you go to our website and you click on support, there's a drop-down link where you can go into this design services. There's a bunch of drop-downs in here, a bunch of questions that you have to answer, and it also has the ability to upload files. We will design the system for you. We will tell you where to put the speakers. We will tell you what speaker to use, what tap to put them on, what amplifier to use it with, what kind of wire you should use, where you should put your volume controls. We'll tell you how to do exactly everything. But that's all dependent on the amount of information you give us. Okay, so if you send us in and you say, hey, I need 8 speakers in a bar, and that's all you say, you may not get exactly what you need when we get it back to you. However, if you give us a PDF line drawing of the building and you give us the specification that you're trying to meet, we can tell you exactly what you need and how to do it. And if it's if something else is specified with an or equivalent call out on there, we can give you the or equivalent and why. This is a free service. This does not cost you a thing. We have 8 guys that their only job in the world is to do these kind of designs for our customers. So we are happy to do it for you. Do not send this to me the day before you need it. Do not send this to me the day before you need it. Because I will say, I'm sorry about your luck and for your trouble, but I can't get this back to you in a day. Okay? We prefer 2 weeks. 2 weeks gives us the ability to deal with all the customers that we're currently dealing with, as well as add you to the queue. We will do it. We will do it for free, but we will not do it in unreasonable amounts of time. Okay? This goes for background music systems, sound masking systems, paging systems, whatever kind of system you want, whatever kind of building it's going in. They just opened one of these indoor skydiving places. Have you guys seen these? They just opened one in Arizona, and our guys did the design layout for it. It was kind of an odd-looking building, so I didn't even know how to set it up, what they wanted to do with all these controls everywhere. Luckily, we got guys that are professional and know how to do it, and again, they're happy to do it. Send us all the information that you can, and we can do that for you. Safety listings. Does everybody here know what UL is? Has everybody heard of UL? So UL is the Kleenex of the safety listing world, right? Kleenex is just a brand. What you really need is a tissue. UL is just a brand. What you need is safety listing. Okay? This is important because a lot of people don't know the difference. Even people in our industry don't know the difference. They will say, it needs to be UL listed, and you might come and say, it is safety listed using ETL, and they'll say, no, it has to be UL listed. It's the same thing. UL is a testing laboratory. ETL is a testing laboratory. Okay, so it's just a matter of who the manufacturer paid to do the tests. As long as it is a nationally recognized testing laboratory, it doesn't matter. It all goes to the safety listing. So most jurisdictions use what they call, or go by NFPA fire code, which is where a lot of this UL stuff comes into. Okay, NFPA is the National Fire Protection Agency. You'll most often hear NFPA 72 is kind of the one that guides our industry as a general rule and all the requirements that we have to meet for specific jobs and specific locations. So it doesn't matter whether it's UL, ETL, or SA, as long as it is safety listed to that particular listing, then your product will meet the specification. The authority having jurisdiction, the AHJ, you'll hear that term a lot. They'll understand this because UL is, again, just a brand, but your customer may not. You may have to overcome that with them. The difference here and the reason why these other guys exist, UL knows that they're now the brand, just like Kleenex, just like Coke, so they charge more for their product, right? They charge more for their testing. The testing is in no way different. The testing in no way takes less time. The testing is no better. They just charge more because they're UL and they think that they're the kings. So just like your box of Kleenex costs more than the Kroger brand or Target brand or whatever. Same principle here. But it is important if in that specification it says it has to meet 1480 or 2043 that you find a product that does that. Because again, if you don't, and if your customer's like, oh, whatever, I don't care, and you put whatever it is in, and then the fire inspector shows up, and it's not UL listed, or it's not safety listed to whatever the safety listing is, you're going to be pulling it all out. And you're going to be replacing it, or your customer's going to sue you, or who knows what's going to happen. I have seen instances where the fire marshal didn't come until the day before a restaurant was supposed to open, and the speakers were not safety listed, so the owner of the restaurant couldn't open because the integrator had to get the speakers. They weren't in stock in town. They had to order them. It was going to take 2 or 3 days. Then they had to do the work to install them. Fire marshal wouldn't release the building to be opened until it was done. Customer had to delay opening a week, wound up suing the integrator for the 7 days of missed business, plus all the marketing. You don't want those kind of problems, right? Read the specification, make sure your product meets it. So there's 1,304 standards in the NFPA code book. If you ever have trouble sleeping, I highly recommend NFPA 72. It's a PDF, it's about 100 pages. If you get past page 4 without falling asleep, I'll be impressed. These are the ones that we mainly deal with in the AV space. 1449 for surge protective devices. So if you're installing a rack and they need to have some, safety listed equipment in there, 1449 is the one that you're going to be dealing with. 1480, this is the biggest one on the speaker side because it works with, it's certified to work with fire alarms and emergency messaging. 2043, you can put a speaker in an air handling space. 1678, carts, rack stands, and then 60065, generally an amplifier. That really applies to amplifiers, sound masking generators, that kind of stuff. So there are some specific information about this. If you want, you can go to the UL or ETL website, or you can just Google NFPA 72 and it'll tell you all kinds of good stuff about it. I'm behind on this. It's actually 72 now, not 70. Really boring. Again, these are specific chapters that apply to our industry. Wiring and protection, wiring methods are important. Wiring protection is going to detail whether you need conduit, what kind of conduit, how much conduit, and then wiring methods also deals with how they're connected to the transformer, whether you can just twist them together and leave them there, whether you have to put a butt connector on them, whether you have to solder them together. It's all going to apply to whatever jurisdiction that you're in, and is important to know. So this is Arizona, the great state of Arizona. I was surprised when I found this. So I got this from the NSCA, the National System Contractors Association, and this is a description of what is required for an AV systems integrator to do low voltage installs in the state of Arizona. I will tell you, Arizona is the Wild West. You can pretty much do anything you want for the most part, almost anywhere. It's a very interesting place to live. So I thought there would be no requirement for this. I literally thought anybody off the street could just install and who cared? And it turned out to be wrong. You do have to have a statewide license. So if you're going to work on low voltage alarms, intercoms, telephones, clocks, TVs, whatever it is, you do have to have a license to be able to do that. You'll see down here there is a fair amount of, you have to take a test for a couple of things, you got to pay for a license, you got to renew your license every so often. Make sure you know what your state requires. You know, I know we have somebody here from Illinois, which is a terrible state to do anything in. And then a lot of you guys, or most of you guys are probably from Missouri. Does Missouri require a license to be a low voltage integrator?
Certain parts.
Just certain parts?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm glad that you said that, because in certain parts, if you don't know, and in the one that you do most of your business in, it's not required, but you're like, oh, I heard about this job over here, and you go do that job, but over there they require it, they're not going to let you do it, okay? You're going to have wasted all of your time going out there and doing it, and your customer, do not rely on your customer to know, okay? The person that's opening their business doesn't care. They just want someone to do it. They're only going to care when the fire marshal comes in and says, who did the install? Joe's Audio, looks at his list, Joe's Audio doesn't have a license, tear it all out, right? You don't want that kind of trouble. So know what you're required to do in the state that you're in. I was not surprised that North Carolina, look at this compared to Arizona. North Carolina is one of the hardest states to be a low voltage contractor in. Like, there's all kinds of tests and requirements and things you got to do. The lesson here is don't move to North Carolina if you want to still work in this industry, okay? Because that is a lot of things and requirements that have to happen. And it could be, it becomes prohibitive to do business in some of these instances, especially as independent small business owners, when you've got to go through all these fees and have all this stuff. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't surprise me that North Carolina is like this. It's a crazy East Coast state. If you want this information, it is available on the NSCA website. I do have it probably on my computer. If you want me to email it to you, I can also do that. Just send me an email, and I'm happy to do that for you. Okay, does everybody know what this is? Does anybody use this? I had to put this in, well, it's because you've got it memorized. You've done it too much. You don't even you probably knew ohm, right? So, Ohm's wheel. This is a great tool. I downloaded a picture of this, and it's what's on my phone. If I just look at my phone screen, because I hate math, and I have to see it in order to be able to remember it. Too many beers along the years. So Ohm's law is important for a variety of reasons. Ohm's law will let you make sure that your system is hooked up right. Okay, so you can actually test your system once it's done to make sure that you've got it hooked up correctly using Ohm's law. What we're doing here is 10 speakers all tapped at 15 watts. Using Ohm's law, we know that we should have a resistance of 33.66 ohms. So you do have to have an impedance meter for this, not a multimeter. You actually have to have a specific impedance meter in order to be able to test this. But what this will ensure is that when you leave, you know that all your speakers are hooked up correctly, that there are no shorts in your wires, that everything is hooked up and working, nothing's over-tapped, nothing is under-tapped, they're all where they're supposed to be. One of the easiest things in the world to do is to mistap a speaker. It's very easy to, turn the notch one too far or one too few. It's very easy for another contractor to come through that's either nailing or stapling something and to hit one of your speaker wires, causing a short. All these things can happen on the job. And as we all know, if we've ever tried to fix one speaker, it's always the last one you pull out of the ceiling that's the problem. So it takes a lot of work to do that. This will ensure that before you leave the site, using Ohm's law with that impedance meter, that you know it's all hooked up correctly. Same thing, reverse math. We know that we have a 70 volt system if our impedance is right and all of our speakers are at 15 watts. So how many speakers do you need? This is often a question that is asked. We had a laugh about this, where 400 horns were necessary for some reason. So the distance from the floor to the ceiling, double that as a general rule, and that will be the distance between speakers. So if you have an 8-foot ceiling, speakers are probably going to wind up being 16 feet apart. If you have a 10-foot ceiling, they'll be 20 feet apart. If you have a 12-foot ceiling, they'll be 24 feet apart. As a general rule, that's the general rule. Now there are some, some buildings are weird where it might go from one ceiling height to another ceiling height, or the ceiling material may change. All of these things can come into play, but as a general rule, double the ceiling height, that's your distance between speakers. Hey, look at that, I got ahead of myself. Okay, so how do you lay them out then? Right, so if I put my speakers every 16 feet apart as previously indicated, and my speakers all have a dispersion of 90 degrees, well, now I have these gaps, right, and we can see. So if I put a table right in the middle of this gap, they're not going to hear anything, or they're only going to hear reflected sound, right, because we all wish that the floor would just absorb noise, but it doesn't. It reflects around, but this person's not going to get the best listening experience. So by adding a speaker with a wider dispersion, using the same number of speakers, we can cover the majority of those gaps, or adding more speakers will also help us to cover those gaps. So more speakers is great because we're selling more and we're installing more. However, your customer may bristle at the cost. So think about the wider dispersion option as a good solution for that. Okay, SPL calculator. You can actually go into our website again, atlasIED.com/SPL calculator, and you can look at what your ending SPL is going to be based on the distance that you're trying to use. This is important, especially in like a wall mount application where you've got a speaker on the wall and your farthest seat away is 100 feet or something. What's the volume level going to be when it gets to that person at a given power? Because you want it to be as good for that person as it is for the person in the front row. There are apps for this also if you'd rather do it on your phone, but if you don't have that and you want to use our website, go ahead and do. Loudspeaker placement tool. This is also on our website. It's on almost every speaker page at the bottom, I believe. There's a drop down here that lets you select your speaker. Then you can tell it what taps you're going to be using, whether you want to use feet or meters, how big the room is, length and width, how high the ceiling is, where the listener is going to be sitting or standing. So that's important because the volume is going to be different, right? If you're going to set your average, let's say 6 feet is going to be standing height versus 3 feet, which is sitting height, you're going to lose 3 dB just in that distance. So selecting this properly is going to be important. Then once you put all that information in, it'll run, and then it will tell you that you need 2 rows of speakers, 2 columns of speakers for a total of 4 speakers. They need to be 15.36 feet apart. First speaker needs to be 7.32 feet away from 2 walls. Based on the taps that you set, that you told that you were going to use, 90 dB is going to be the max SPL with a 5 dB difference from side to side. You need to have a 10 watt amplifier. Max SPL is going to be 99 dB. And in order to get to that max, you're going to need a 77 watt amplifier. Okay? So this is just another tool that helps you do what you need to do when you're picking a speaker. This is a tool that our guys will use if they're designing the system for you. I'm sure they all cheat and use this as well because it's easy and it's automatic. You can also download an Excel version of it if you want to have it on your computer. That way if you're out somewhere and you don't have internet access, but you have your tablet or whatever and you want to just do it in Excel format, it's also available. And I will tell you this, that while only Atlas parts are listed in here, there are enough comparisons to other speakers that if you were using one, you could use the Atlas part and it would be comparable to what that other speaker would do. Okay, so this goes back to your speaker wire question. Length of the run, how much wattage, any other considerations, does it need to be all weather, does it need to be UL certified? Less than 50 watts and 50 feet, I'd use 18 gauge. More than 50 watts, more than 50 feet, I'd use 16 gauge. It's cheap, it's easy, it's easy to work with, it's easy to deal with. You don't need to go much crazier than that. You can use 14 gauge if you want, you could use 12 gauge if you want. I guess it just depends on what your customer wants to pay for. I will tell you this, that a lot of 70 volt speakers, the inputs are either bare wire that you're gonna wire nut together, or it's a Phoenix style connector. So if the wire's too big, it's not gonna be able to get into that thing. So I wouldn't go any lower than 14, 16, 18, even in some instances 20. If you're setting up 4 sound masking speakers at 1 watt each, and it's in it's 20 feet of wire, you can use a 20 gauge wire and it would be fine. All right, so what have we learned? 70 volt versus 8 ohm. It's easier to wire, no series parallel, no individual channels for each zone, lower gauge wire, less of it, less expensive electronics, reduced install time, although your customer doesn't need to know that. Sound quality, you know, this is one that people bring up a lot. It doesn't sound as good as an 8 ohm speaker. I think there may be some truth to that in a home theater aspect, but in background music, I don't think anyone's going to notice or care at all. I think that the quality of transformers today is so much better than it was 20 or 30 years ago that you would be hard-pressed to really have a noticeable difference in a restaurant or a retail store where the sound quality was that much different than from 8 ohm to 70 volt. And that's highly reliable, which is also important because nobody wants to go out and do a service call. All right, questions? Nothing. Not one question. All right, we can take a bio break right now before we get into this next section, which is going to be a little more detailed. Hopefully you guys may have had some experience with. But let's take 5 minutes and we will come on back, all right?